Yep, that seems like 30 seconds.
Okay. Alrighty. I would like to call the Novi Community School District regular meeting Thursday, June 4th, 2020, 7 p.m. to order. I want to welcome everybody to our virtual Board of Education meeting. And Mr. Mena, if we can have a roll call vote of our trustees, I would appreciate it.
Okay, sure. Trustee Cook should be showing up shortly. Trustee Hood.
Here.
Trustee Mena here. Trustee Murphy.
Here.
We see her. Trustee Roney.
Here.
Trustee Ruskin. Okay, and I saw the lips move. And Trustee Smith should be joining us shortly as well. So.
Okay, thank you. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can get a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Murphy, supported by Mr. Mena. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, Trustee Hood.
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Trustee Roney.
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and Trustee Cook. There he is. He popped up. This is for agenda.
Yes.
There we go.
6-0. Next up, we have our comments from the audience related to agenda items. This is an opportunity for the audience, virtual or here, to complete a comment card related to anything on tonight's agenda. Do we have any related to the agenda comments, Dr. Matthews?
We do not have any related to the agenda, but later on we do have some comments, but they're not related to the agenda at this point.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to the consent items. There are 3 items on our consent agenda. The approval of the minutes, both the regular meeting minutes from May 21st, 2020, work session meeting minutes from May 21st, 2020, the MASB 2020-21 membership, and also the MHSAA 2020 and 2021 membership resolution. If I can get a motion, please.
Move to approve the consent items as presented.
I'll support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mrs. Roney. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Hood.
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Trustee Roney.
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0. Next, we have action items on our agenda. Tonight, we have 3 action items. We will start with the first, which is the personnel report. Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you. This evening, we have 1 item on our personnel report. It is a retirement. It's Bridget Ruhan, Administrative Assistant at Novi Meadows.
If I can get a motion.
I move that the Novi Community School Board of Education adopts the personnel report recommendations as presented.
Support.
And supported by Mr. Cook. Any comments or questions regarding The personnel report.
I would just like to express my appreciation to Ms. Ruhan over at Novi Meadows. She was always a bright face and smiley face and welcoming face as I entered the building, and I'm sure she was to many staff, students, and parents at Novi Meadows as well.
I agree with that. Thank you very much, Dr. Matthews. Okay, hearing no other comments, if we can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena?
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Next up, we have our 2020 summer tax levy. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. In order to prepare for the July 1st tax bills, the district must certify the summer tax levy no later than early June. The 2020-21 fiscal year taxable value of the Novi Community School District is $2,552,958,920. This is an increase of 5% over the previous year's taxable value of $2,431,283,710. Using the district's taxable value as the predominant factor, the 2020-21 budget will be based upon the millage rates on the attached schedule. To the homeowner, the district's total millage levy will be 10.6378 mills, which is a decrease of 0.6267 mills from fiscal year 2019-20. This equates to a decrease in property taxes of $62.67 per $100,000 of taxable value. At the November 21st, 2019 board member, the Novi Board of Education resolved to levy 50% of the taxes in the summer and 50% in the winter. The certification of the attached 2020 summer tax levy was presented at the May 21st, 2020 regular meeting for information and is recommended for approval tonight at the regular board meeting. So we would ask that the board approve this summer tax levy.
Thank you very much. If I can get a recommendation from a board member? Mr. Mena?
Yeah, I move that the board, in the best interest of the school district, resolve to levy 50% of the taxes this summer, or in the summer.
Support.
Recommendation by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Murphy. Any comments or questions? I know this was information only at our last board meeting, but does anyone have any concerns, questions, or comments before we vote? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Mena, I will ask you for a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much. Next, we have our Novi High School diving board and stand replacement. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. On May 13th, 2020, bids for the Novi High School pool diving board and stand replacement scheduled for the summer of 2020 were opened and publicly read aloud. The district received 2 bids for replacement, which includes replacing the existing diving boards and the diving stands. The district received 1 qualified bid for this work from Barzuni Contracting LLC in the amount of $46,189. It is recommended that the Board of Education award the Novi High School pool diving board and stand replacement funded from the 2019 Bond Capital Project Fund and Sinking Fund to Barzuni Contracting LLC in the amount of $46,189. Attached is a letter of recommendation and bid calculation from Barzuni Contracting LLC and Plant Moran Crescent. The Novi High School pool diving board and stand replacement bid was presented to the Board of Education for information at the May 21st, 2020 board meeting, and it comes back tonight for approval. So we would ask that the board approve that. And we do have Mr. Donnelly here and also Mr. Gordon, the athletic director here, if the board has any questions.
I can make a motion.
Okay,
I would make a motion that the Novi Community School District Board of Education award the Novi High School Pool Diving Board stand replacement funded from the 2019 Bond Capital Projects Fund and Seeking Fund to Verrazini Contracting LLC in the amount of $46,189.
I'll support.
recommended by Mrs. Murphy, supported by Mrs. Roney. Thank you to Mr. Donnelly and Mr. Gordon for being here at our meeting tonight to answer any questions and to see this through and to come to fruition. So does anybody have any comments or questions before we take a vote?
No, I know there's certainly going to be a lot of happy folks.
I do.
Brian, we would just
thank everybody.
Brian, you're kind of cutting out a little bit, so we're going to put you on pause and let Mr. Mena talk.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everybody for
Here we go.
supporting us in athletics. I mean, it does mean the world to us. And oh, that's fine. Go ahead, Mr. Mena.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say something, but I couldn't say it any better than Brian just did. Okay. No, I do know. I do know that this.
Thanks.
I know a lot of folks are going to be very happy to get these. I know those boards have been needing replacement for quite some time, so it's going to be. I know it's going to be pretty exciting to see those finally get replaced.
I would agree.
Thank you, Mr. Mena. And Mr. Gordon, we appreciate you. We got the gist of what you were saying about how appreciative you were and how athletics is. And you're just going to keep on talking, but you really did actually bring a smile to all of our faces tonight. So we appreciate having you here. Oh, goodness. Okay. So that being said, Mr. Mena, I will ask for a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Trustee Cook.
Yes.
You're laughing. I know.
Trustee Hood.
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Trustee Roney.
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone. Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Next, we have information and discussion. We have 4 items on our agenda this evening. We will start with the 2019-2020 final budget amendment. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Tonight, we will present our 2019-2020 final budget amendment. And I'm going to share a screen here. So all of you should have this presentation. We have Miss Deanna Wheeler, who is our Director of Finance in the district. And she has been working with Miss Minnick, who, as you know, has left the district. But Miss Wheeler has been working to prepare this presentation and will present this to the board this evening. And so I will kind of guide us through the presentation here, but I will turn this over to Ms. Wheeler.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. We're going to start with the 1920 final budget amendment. In summary, from the March amendment, we have a decrease in revenues and expenditures due to the closure of COVID-19. We had anticipated 11.56% back in March, and that has risen to an 11.91% fund balance with our final amendment. All right, so you can see here our revenues. Due to the closure, we had some decreases in revenues from our March amendment. local revenues due to preschool care, the lost facility rentals, and pay to participate refunds was a big part of that 571,000 decrease. We also had some increases and decreases in state revenues and federal revenues, mostly due to grants.
So as the board will recall, our per pupil allocation is made up of both local and state revenue. The state fills in the gap between what our local revenue generates and what the state per pupil foundation is. And as you can see, the state revenue held fairly steady. The local revenues, as Ms. Wheeler mentioned, did decrease primarily due to loss of rental, care, preschool, and those kinds of things. Any questions on this slide for Ms. Wheeler?
This is based on the information that we have current to date, is that correct? But there certainly could be, even though we are discussing and voting at the next meeting on the final budget amendment, there could potentially be some changes based on our last payment. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So as of right now, we are anticipating no supplemental decrease from the state in this final budget, but there is definitely an opportunity or a chance that that could happen in our final state aid payments in July and August.
As the board recalls, our state aid payments for the 2019-2020 school year come to the district from the state October through August. And so all expenses, however, stop on June 30th for the current school year. And so in essence, we've paid or committed all of the revenue that we will get from the state already. And what the state aid payments in July and August really do is pay us back for expenses that we've already incurred. And so there is a possibility that we have been told that the state may, because there is a $1 billion hole in the state aid fund for 2019-20, may decide to take back some revenue that they had promised to us. And if they did, that would have to come out of our fund balance, because we really have no place to cut. We've spent all the money already, or committed all the money to be spent already for this 2019-2020 school year. We're hopeful that that does not happen, but that is a possibility. At this point, there is no bill pending, either in the legislature or before the governor, for that to happen. But it is a possibility, because they do have to try to figure out how to balance the state aid fund and also the general fund.
So I'm raising my hand, Danielle. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Sorry, I can only see a couple people over here. Go ahead, Bobby.
Hey, it's Bobby. So we discussed this at the Finance Committee meeting on Monday, and it, you know, if in the event that happens, then we would, again, we don't know if we would have to actually do another amendment come September or whatever to fix this, or because because we have no guidance yet at this point kind of about that. So
I'll let Ms. Wheeler kind of explain the mechanics of it. And so Deanna?
Yep. So for the 19-20 budget, we will be adopting this hopefully at the next board meeting, the June 18th meeting. But after that, we won't have another chance to amend the 19-20 budget. But in the 2021 budget, we will hopefully be able to look at it and have some more direction and from the state and be able to amend the 2021 budget in September or October.
So in essence, the amendment comes in the form of amending the 2021 budget as opposed to amending the 19-20 budget, because this is, by state law, we're required to close the books on the 19-20 school budget by June 30th and adopt the preliminary budget for 2021 by June 30th as well. And so once we close the books on this budget in 19-20, we would have to make any adjustments in the 2021 budget.
Danielle, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Mrs. Hood.
Yeah, so, and we did talk about this at the committee meeting, but Deanna, how does that get amended in the 2021 budget? Would it just be, I mean, what line item mechanically? Would it just be shown as a reduction in our fund balance?
Yeah, so the once the 1920 fiscal year ends and we have it audited, we'll have a new audited fund balance number. So that new fund balance would be our new beginning fund balance. And so that might be different than the 11.91 that I'm projecting if we were to get that negative supplemental in July and August.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other questions on the revenues, we will go to the expenditures. Ms. Wheeler?
All right, as you can see from the first amendment in March, we had projected total expenditures of a little over 82 million. Due to the COVID-19 closure, we were able to save some of our expenditures and most of the line items. Some of the big ones to note would be in basic programs and instructional support services, we had some savings in the Office of Academics. We also had a bunch of savings in operations and maintenance due to utility cost savings. But definitely we were able to save all around in this area, our expenditures.
Mr. Minna?
Mr. Mena? Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just curious to find out, could you explain some of the increases in the areas that didn't have a decrease? I mean, certainly what we're showing here is good. I'm just curious if you can explain, given that we would have expected reductions in just about all these areas, why some of these aren't.
Yep, so actually, I think it's in our next slide. There was some expenditures related to the MSP safety grant that were in addition, and then we had some additional special education tuition out of district that added to the increase of expenditures.
So these are expenses that we incur regardless of whether we're open or not?
Correct. Well, they were in addition to what we had anticipated in March.
Okay, I will have to dig into that a little bit deeper later.
I'd be happy to look into anything that you might have additional questions on as well.
If any of the board does have a question as you review this information, this tonight is presented for information and discussion and would come back to the board for final approval on June 18th. And so if you do have questions between now and June 18th, please feel free to send them either to Ms. Holly or to me, and we will work with Ms. Wheeler to get answers for those questions.
So can I, Deanna, can I ask just a quick, so I see that additional special education tuition for out of district, and if I look back at the expenditures, does that fall under pupil support services or basic programs? Where would the line item for that be? Do you know?
The added needs. The second one.
Okay, added needs. So even though we had an additional 191, we only increased by 121. So according to this, so that's I want to say it's not really technically a decrease because there's still an added cost, but the added cost that the actual expenditure increase is less than the increase on the slide.
That is correct. You know what? Actually, part of it might be in pupil support services as well.
Okay.
But yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep. So our next step for this budget would just be to adopt the final budget amendment on the June 18th meeting. So as we had just discussed as well, that this would be the final opportunity for us to amend this final budget for 1920. And then if we needed to do so, another amendment for the 2021, we'd be able to do that in the fall.
So one thing to remind the board is our fund balance, we anticipated in the First Amendment to be at 11.56%, actually increased a little to 11.91%. And that becomes important as we head into next year with some uncertainty, but with a budget projected to decrease $700 per student. So that will come in handy for us as well. So that is our final budget amendment for the 1920 school year. And again, if you have questions or concerns, please share them with either Ms. Holly or myself, and we will certainly work with Ms. Wheeler to get you the answers to those questions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wheeler and Dr. Matthews. And the board will just pass on their questions before the next meeting. So we appreciate you being here tonight. Next up, we're going to roll right into our next information and discussion, which is 2020-21 preliminary budget. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. And again, Ms. Wheeler is here to present the 2020-2021 general fund preliminary budget. This is the budget that we have anticipated moving forward. As you will see, we have to do some projections as to what we think our revenue and expenses will be for next year, because by state law, we're required to have a budget adopted by July 1, so we have to adopt it by June 30. But we don't know our pupil, how many students we're going to have next year, and we also don't know at this point, certainly, what our per pupil allocation from the state is going to be. We do know that the Revenue Estimating Conference in May identified a significant budget deficit both in the 1920 and the 2021 school aid fund. And so we have developed a budget with a $700 per student decrease for next year. And I will let Ms. Wheeler kind of walk us through this. So there's the introductory slide, and here is the first slide. Ms. Wheeler.
All right. So yep, this is the 2021 original budget. We are anticipating that 1920 fund balance to be the 11.91%. So that's carried over onto this budget here. We are anticipating significant revenue losses in our state aid revenue. So we see that 4 million indicated there. And then due to the loss in revenue, we need to also find ways to reduce our expenses. So we will show you in further slides how we did that. And we're anticipating expenditures to be down by 4.6% or 4.6 million. And then the fund balance, if this were to go through, would be the 9.97%.
So as the board knows, there is a policy that we have a 10% fund balance, and this comes to you with a 9.97. So we're hoping that you're allowing us to round up to 10%. But part of this is typically in the audit, the fund balance typically goes up some because when they close the books on the 1920 school year, as we have in previous years, our fund balance has typically rose fractionally because typically we don't spend all of our money, and when all the accounts are closed, we tend to have a little bit more money than we anticipated. So we anticipate that will happen again, and that will put that over the 10% fund balance. But this does come to you with that, and we recognize that when we amend the budget for the first time in the 2021 school year, we will need to work with the board to either change our policy or to make that so that it is over 10% as we move forward. Ms. Wheeler?
Can I make a quick suggestion that I think might be helpful prior to next week? If we could get kind of what the average of that has been, would that be easily accessible information? You said that it has bounced back. I think it's bounced back every year, but it might be good, especially if we're going to justify going under or adopting it at going under 9.97 to have that data.
Sure. Ms. Wheeler and I can work, well, Ms. Wheeler would do all the work. I would just take all the credit for getting you that information. But she would be able to go back over the last several years and identify the difference between the final budget amendment fund balance and the audited fund balance. We can do that, right, Ms. Wheeler?
Yep, I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So here are the revenues. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you. So here is the revenue slide. The assumptions that we made are at the top. So we are assuming a $700 per pupil decrease in state aid funding. So you can see that now there in the state revenues of the decrease of 4.6 million. We also anticipate that the lost revenue that we had in the final amendment from our local revenues due to preschool care, facility rentals would be recouped. So that those areas would be functioning all of 2021, and we would see an increase in that area. Any questions?
So state revenue goes down by 4.6. Local revenue will go up by a little over $500,000. So the total decrease in revenue we are budgeting will be just over $4 million. Okay. Ms. Wheeler, expenditures.
All right. And then in our expenditures, in order to combat that lost revenue, we made some assumptions that we'd need to do a 5% cut in salary related expenses and a 25% cut in non-salary related expenses. Now, to be clear about the salary related expenses, 5% doesn't mean a 5% in salary cut across the board necessarily. There's many ways to do that. And we're looking at all the options. And we also realize that many of that or much of that salary related expense would be a negotiated item. So we have that in consideration as well. The way that I did this for this budget would just be across the board though. So you can see a decrease in every single line item in order to comply with those assumptions.
Now, ultimately, as we move forward in spending the money for 2021, some of the line items are going to be more difficult to cut 25% than others. For example, it would be difficult to cut diesel fuel by 25%. And so that would mean that in some other area that we would have to increase the 25% to perhaps 30 or 33 or 35% decrease in those areas. But our assumption is that we, in the non-salary related expenses, will find a way to cut 25% through a variety of different ways, recognizing that some line items are going to be more difficult to cut than others.
So just to further clarify that, Steve, the when we see the first budget amendment, because obviously if we adopt this at the next meeting, when we see the first budget amendment, a lot of those numbers could change somewhat significantly.
Correct. Right. Okay. And it is also important to note, for example, diesel fuel, for example, is much cheaper now than it was at the beginning of the 1920 school year. And so those are all things that we have to keep in mind. Market conditions for natural gas, for diesel fuel are going to impact, the length of winter, how cold it gets. All those things will impact how much we actually expend in some of those line items. We are continuing to focus on being energy efficient in our district and making sure that people turn out lights and turn off computers, and Mr. Dragoo is able to monitor the heating and cooling system remotely so that we're able to manage that effectively. But some of these line items at this point, we've just reduced across the board, but some of these changes will be significant, as Ms. Murphy identified earlier. All right, then we go to the next steps.
All right, so for this budget, we're going to continue monitoring the state budgets and wait for their guidance on what the negative supplemental will be. We'll have to update the revenue and expenditure projections with that first budget amendment in September, October for the 2021 original budget.
So next year, our first budget amendment will probably be much sooner than our budget amendments have been in the years past. So we anticipate September, October, we will come back with a budget amendment because we will have more information from the state. As of this point, we have no indication from the state the direction they are going to go with the school aid fund. And so we have to do our best to create a budget for you. And so this budget that we've created here on this slide here really is our best first guess. And it is hoped that we will continue to get some direction from the state so that we can give the board some clarity as well as give us clarity as to what our budget will be as we enter the 2021 school year. But this is we are required by state law to adopt a preliminary budget by June 30th of this year.
So next meeting, we'll have a public hearing.
Correct.
Soon before, as we have to by law, before we have this as a voted item.
Correct. We will have that public hearing. That will be the first part of the board meeting on June 18th.
And we are anticipating that will still be remote.
The remote executive order extends through June 30th.
Okay. Okay. Well, that'll be an interesting public meeting.
So that is our budget presentation for this evening. Both our preliminary or our final budget amendment for 1920 and our preliminary budget for the 2021 school year.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Yep. And Ms. Wheeler, I know this is a painstaking process and there's a lot to be learned over the next several months, but we appreciate all your hard work and your diligence in presenting this to us and meeting with the Finance Committee this week. And we look forward to any questions being sent to Dr. Matthews to work with you over the next couple weeks prior to having our public hearing and our vote. So we appreciate that. Any other comments or questions from the board members? No? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, I think we will move on to our next item, which is the federal COVID funding support resolution. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you. This resolution was discussed in the legislative committee, and we bring it to the board for information and discussion to see if the board wants to move this forward or if the board does not. I don't know if any of the members of the legislative committee want to kind of talk about the discussion that we had, but this would be an appropriate time to do that.
So I received this information from Oakland Schools and from their board, and I moved it forward to legislative committee to have a conversation and discussion. So Mrs. Murphy is the chair. If you would like to share, I haven't heard myself, but if you'd like to share the discussion that was had and get the board in conversation in this regard.
Sure. So this is actually a resolution, the MASB, a sample resolution, the one that came through
today. I think the final resolution came through today, right?
Well, we reviewed two different resolutions. We felt like the wording of this one was a little bit better than the other one. So we kind of felt like this one was a little cleaner and more, believe it or not, kind of spells things out a little bit differently. You know, I know we don't normally do resolutions, but these are strange times. And we certainly have people advocating on our behalf at both the state level and the federal level has a separate group of people that advocate. I know resolutions, some people say they don't make a tremendous difference, but I know that when I served on the legislative committee at the MASB level, Jennifer, who's the main kind of lobbyist, said, you know, it does help to go in with a stack of papers to be able to say, look, we have all these districts, they're school board members, they're community members that are supportive of things. And it does give some weight to what they're trying to lobby for. Obviously, these are strange times with the budget information that we just heard about. Trying to advocate for additional federal monies to help support our students seems like a wise thing to do. And I made the comment at the meeting, and I'll make it here, you know, because we haven't typically been a board that passes a lot of resolutions, I think that kind of speaks volumes, not even necessarily at the state level, but even to our employees, that this is something that we're fighting for, to try and address some of the shortfalls that are going to exist for us for at least for the next year and perhaps beyond that. But the feeling of the legislative committee was to bring it to you guys so that we could have a full discussion of the board. The committee was fairly supportive, actually, I'll be a little stronger on that, was very supportive of moving this to this direction and getting some feedback from the rest of you. But it's a thorough resolution, and it's unless there's, I mean, there are things that board members have objection to something that is in there. We could alter it if we needed to do that, or if there's things that we wanted to include, we can alter it to fit more what this board feels. But hopefully you've had a chance to look at it, and Danielle, you can just open it up for discussion. But the legislative committee was very supportive of moving this to this point, and really would like to see us, take a bit of a stand on it. So, but we'll leave it up to the board's discretion.
So I will open it up to discussion, and if there is some specific language, we certainly can, this is information discussion, and emails can be sent to Dr. Matthews. But just in general, if anybody has any comments as a big picture overview of the resolution in general, and whether we feel like this is something that we want to move forward with into our action items coming up June 18th. We would love to hear feedback on that, so we have a direction on how you would like us to proceed. Yes, Mrs. Hood?
Hi. We talked about this at the Oakland Schools Government Relations Committee meeting the other night. It was last night, so it was after our legislative committee meeting. And there is a lot of support throughout the Oakland schools districts. And it, I think everybody has read or heard about the House Resolution 5 something that some Michigan House members have done a resolution to say, yeah, please don't bail out Michigan. I'm paraphrasing. So we all thought it was important as a district to say, yes, our kids did not bring this on. They didn't shut down the government. You can't fight biology. And our students deserve the support, the same kind of support that corporations have gotten and individuals have gotten. And, as we have talked about the reduction in the foundation allowance we're projecting budgeting $700. So every individual who had a tax return in 2018 got $1,200. So really this, to make the districts whole seems like a really pretty small lift, and it would go a long way. And so that's kind of the mindset. And I think that was why we supported it through the legislative committee too. I think, I don't, Mrs. Murphy, do you have anything to add to what I say?
No, I think, when you look at the numbers like that, and like you said, I think at the bottom line is that holding our kids harmless in this is something we would really like to see happen. They're not going to, they've already been, and I hate to say that, but they've really already been harmed in respects that we probably aren't even aware of yet. Some of them more than others in terms of their ability to complete work. And so next year is going to be a very interesting year in terms of trying to catch kids up and all of those things. And we just really don't know what that might cost at that side, but to be taking a decrease of that significance and trying to make a budget work, which you saw the 5% in our salaries and 25% in non-salary related expenses that's a big hit, for teachers that have really been working hard to try and support our students through this. So I'd like to see us hold our kids harmless. I'd like to see us advocate on behalf of our kids and this district. And I hope that you guys feel the same way. So that's it.
Thank you.
And Dr. Ruskin, if I may add a little bit more. So the federal government legislature has passed 3 or 4 CARES Acts at this point. And none of them have included specific fill your hole, budget hole for public schools money. So there is another act that the House passed, and it does include, it's called the HEROES Act. I didn't read up on it. I just read some bullet points that we got from the Oakland schools. And it does contain $60 billion in K-12 funding for all states. So when you think about Michigan's budget hole in the state aid fund, or the school aid fund, I'm sorry, of $1.2 billion, is just a drop in the bucket of the trillions that we, the federal taxpayers have paid to bail out or provide emergency relief to corporations and individuals and small businesses and many, many other entities. And so it seems like a very small lift to help our students. So I'm kind of saying the same thing twice.
That's okay. Mr. Mena, I did see your hand raised. Did you want to make a comment, question, concern up there? Unmute yourself. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I caught that. Yeah, I mean, I've never been a big fan of resolutions, and my biggest concern when we talked about bringing those forward was that, I was sort of afraid that we were going to get inundated with these. Dr. Matthews had promised that wouldn't happen, and so far I think he's held up his side of the bargain. So I look at this. I don't really have a problem with this particular resolution. I think it's fairly written. I do, though, wanted to comment because on the House resolution, I had heard about this particular resolution, so I made a few calls and actually got a copy of it. And the one, if it's the one that I saw, which was House Resolution 267, there were some representatives who, in essence, were saying that, hey, federal government, here in Michigan, we're practicing responsible fiscal policies and we're doing things to address our shortfalls, but there's other states out there who don't have a rainy day fund, who haven't accumulated and have accumulated significant debt through their pension obligations, and they basically haven't been doing the right things. And then there was an op-ed, I think today or yesterday in the Detroit News, that basically reiterated that exactly what the resolution says. And in it said that bailing out states is, simply put, a bad idea. It shields politicians from consequences and their actions and encourages the same reckless spending habits that got them into the financial mess in the first place. And I sort of agree with that. From a fiscal perspective, it makes no sense rewarding states that folks feel are engaging in bad behavior. It is good to see that in this particular resolution, they do state that they feel that Michigan is not one of those states and that they have been practicing responsible fiscal policy. So again, that's the one that I read. I don't know if maybe there's some others out there, some other resolutions out there that I may have missed, but I do think that this particular resolution that's before us is fair, and I agree with Ms. Murphy. I think, especially since Novi generally doesn't do resolutions, I think this would send a powerful statement to say, hey, you know what, we could use some help.
Thank you, Mr. Mena. Any other comments? Mrs. Roney, I see you getting ready to raise your hand there.
Yeah, I agree with Willie. I mean, I think it's, we don't want to do a resolution every meeting. So, because it waters them down. But I think this is one that needs to be done. The only thing I ask is that at the top of it, we have Novi Community School District, but the C in community is small. So make sure we fix that. We are a school district.
We're just saying, if you're paying attention, Miss Roney.
Hey, yeah, occasionally. I was always good in math, never in grammar. So, but no, I agree with you guys. I feel this is very important. I feel that it really needs to come from the federal government, our monies, because our state doesn't have it. So, to bail out the schools. So, but the federal government will find it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney, for your comments. Any other comments from board members in support, or Mr. Cook, please?
Yeah, reading through it, I don't have an issue with this one. Like Mr. Mena, I don't like doing a bunch of resolutions. And this one, though, is, you know, this is a unique time, and this is something that I think we do need the help with. So, yeah, this is I think that this one is pretty well written, and keeps politics out of it, and keeps it focused on the kids and the school districts needing the money for the kids.
Appreciate that. And I would just like to say, I agree with this too. I think it's very important that we receive, that our students and our staff and our community school district receive the support that we need and deserve to continue to move in the proper direction to support our kids educationally, their social emotional needs that are going to be really high on the list. But what I'd really like to say too is I appreciate the commentary from the board and the thoughtful thinking. We just had a presentation on the budget, and we could see where we're at and the difficulties and the pains that we're going to be enduring over the next year. So I appreciate the board's not just commitment, but your willingness to give your feelings and say how you feel, whether in support or opposition, so that we can make a decision whether we're going to put this on the agenda. So hearing all who are on this call, all 6 of you, say that you are willing and ready to support a resolution like this for this unprecedented time, I would say, Dr. Matthews, we will put this on the agenda for our next meeting for action. Thank you.
I appreciate the discussion.
Okay. Moving on, we will do our last action item, which is the 2020 board meeting schedule discussion. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you. We have a third meeting in June scheduled, and it has come to our attention that may be a conflict for some members. And so the question is twofold. One, do we need a third meeting? And second, if we do, could we move that date to June 20th as opposed to the date that was originally in the school calendar?
Thank you. Mrs. Murphy? Mm-hmm.
Isn't this usually your evaluation?
Yes, it usually is.
Well, so I would think that. What's that?
I could say we could skip it.
Yeah, well, this year is going to be a little odd in terms of obviously goals and all those kinds of things that you took so much time to set up, and so I don't honestly know how the board feels about that, but I guess the question would be, will you be ready if that's the purpose that we use it for on the 20th?
Well, technically, and I'll let Dr. Kinzer chime in if I misspeak here, but evaluation has been gone under the executive order knife a little bit. And for teachers and administrators, there is the possibility that you're allowed to waive the evaluation for this year because, for one, 40% of the evaluation was supposed to be based on student growth, and we have no student growth data this year. A second piece is many of the original goals that were established for both teachers and administrators had to be set aside because of the unusual nature of the spring season this year. And so, I would welcome feedback. I'm not sure the traditional evaluation format is going to work very well this year.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. So that being said, I think that the feedback piece is always truly important, the two-way communication, despite everything that's going on, especially considering all the, in my opinion, and I believe the board agrees with this, great work you've been doing to keep our community strong and together and moving forward. We could propose multiple 20th, which is a Saturday, virtually, or if we feel we don't need that much time like we do usually use in a traditional superintendent evaluation, we could certainly schedule a shorter work session after our Thursday meeting. So I don't know if I really want to put anyone on the spot because we are asking in regards to Dr. Matthews' superintendent evaluation and possibly not doing that. So potentially maybe we could have each board member share their email, their desire via email to Dr. Kinzer and myself. I don't know if that's a fair option, a fair way to go.
I would think that.
Any comments, questions?
Yep, I think that might be, if the board thinks about it, I would encourage you to think about it for the next few days and then share your perspective with Dr. Ruskin and Dr. Kinzer, and we can make a decision on June 18th, how, or sometime next week, how we want to move forward. I would welcome feedback. I'm just not sure that a traditional evaluation protocol would be appropriate or helpful this year.
May
Okay.
I jump in?
I don't, oh, I'm sorry.
I think maybe it's helpful for the board to have a quick summary of how evaluation is happening across the district for other employees. So you have some context for this. So as Dr. Matthews said, the executive order waived the requirement of evaluation for administrators and for teachers who are not on an IDP. So that really means probationary teachers. We must evaluate probationary teachers, and that's primarily so that they can advance towards tenure. There is no executive order statement about other bargaining groups. We are evaluating our NESPA, NTA, and maintenance employees, and that's largely because they have language in their contracts which provides them with incentive money based on their evaluation ratings. So we need to live up to the contract. In talking with our legal counsel about evaluation for administrators, it's clear, except for the superintendent, and that's only if there is language in the superintendent's individual contract speaking to evaluation. So you just might want to review that. And if you make the choice to not evaluate, that you address that. I would say the spirit of this, as Dr. Matthews said, we don't have data, and Dr. Matthews and all superintendents' evaluations are based largely on that data. And so I don't think that there's a meaningful way to follow your evaluation protocol for him. If any of you have any questions about evaluation in a larger context, please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Mrs. Murphy, do you still have a comment? Unmute your, yeah.
I was actually trying to pull up Steve's contract to see if there's language in it that states anything. Do you remember, Steve?
I don't remember. I will review it and on Monday get the board the contract language if there is any.
Okay, that would be helpful. I think I certainly agree that a formal evaluation with all those boxes and discussing all of that is not necessarily going to be helpful. But I think to Dr. Ruskin's point, kind of a check-in, even about how you are doing, would be good, because I know this has not been easy for you. I don't think, and I would kind of like to see everyone. I don't know. We could actually meet outside and just have a little check-in, and Steve can kind of tell us where things were left, because there were things on his evaluation that were kind of to-do things that probably did get resolved between January and when we left. So, I think there might be some value in just kind of where are we at and what do we need. We're going to have to completely regroup for next year, right? A lot of those goals and stuff that we set, we're going to have to modify. So even just kind of refreshing our memory about those might be helpful. So, I mean, I'm certainly available to meet, and I have no problem with changing the date. But if we decide to do it on a shorter thing, that's fine too. I did notice though that our meeting on the 18th starts at 7:30 because of the career prep graduation. So I don't know if because they're not really doing.
We're going to work out the details. They are having something I'm not sure is going to take as long as it typically does, but we'll verify that with Ms. Chianfera.
Okay. Because it would be helpful if we decide to do it that evening, if we could move that. I mean, I don't know what's on the agenda, what you guys have planned for that evening, but if it is going to be longer and we want to take the time with Steve to kind of just go over things, we might want to consider moving that time up.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you. So again, if anybody has any questions, concerns, comments about the specifics of the superintendent evaluation, please reach out to myself and Dr. Kinzer via email. And logistically, I think that we will have to have some type of a vote when this comes forward to change the board calendar, correct? So I believe we can have a plan in place for that, even if it's a work session on the 18th, and vote for it at the regular board meeting. Is that correct, Sheila? She's shaking her head over here. So we won't just tell you that night, oh, by the way, you're going to stay with us for another hour and a half, I promise. But we will have to have an official vote at our regular board meeting on the 18th to officially change the calendar. But you will be, based on the feedback we receive, we'll decide on either the 18th or the 20th within the next few days, if that is okay with anyone. Mr. Cook?
Because it's a public meeting, how are we going to let the public know that we've changed it to the 18th or the 20th based on not voting on this until the 18th?
Looks like Dr. Ruskin is checking with me.
Sheila says that we will post it as happening on the 18th. She thinks the agenda is going to be small, and then we will do the official vote beforehand. But she believes that if we have communication about concerns and, you know, the content of the meeting prior to, that we will be able to get that public notice out as required by law, Mr. Cook. Okay. Thank you for all the conversation and feedback. I appreciate it. Next on our agenda, we have comments from the audience. These comments from the audience can be related anything in the purview of the Novi Community School District Board of Education. Due to our virtual format, there is a form that we ask the public to fill out in advance. And I do believe that Dr. Matthews has some comments from the audience that he would like to share with the board.
Yes, I do.
Dr. Matthews.
We have 3 comments this evening. The first is from Sharon Trumpy. Thank you to the Board of Education for this opportunity to share my comments tonight. As you know, I attended multiple board meetings in the fall of 2019 to share my concerns regarding my Black son's experience in the school district. While I am pleased that my efforts succeeded in changing some of the district policies, I felt the process was unnecessarily arduous. As I shared with Dr. Matthews and the Board of Education members at that time, your primary responsibility is to ensure that all students are safe and respected in their classrooms. It should not have been a battle to provide for my Black son. I'm hoping that recent events have opened the eyes of the Novi Community School District and the Board of Education to how pressing and necessary it is to make a robust, actionable commitment to anti-racism. I'm asking that the Board of Education develop an action plan that includes strategy for hiring Black teachers, training and promoting Black leadership, providing support to Black students and teachers, more robust anti-racism training for staff and students, and a commitment to diversifying and deepening the curriculum. Thank you. The second comment is from Karen Anthony, and she says, does Novi intend to work on the racial issues and disparities in the district? Do you, the Board of Education, have an action plan that includes hiring Black teachers? Does the Board of Education intend to be sure you are promoting Black leadership as well as providing support to Black students and teachers? Are you intending to promote robust anti-racism training for staff and students? And are you willing to commit to diversifying and deepening the racial ethnic curriculum? And the third comment is from Kelly Kakish, and it says, get to it here. Are you aware that all of these initiatives can be done with free support from Oakland schools? That's right. The kind of change doesn't have to cost more money to the district because it's already paid for through our tax dollars. Contact J. Marks, PhD, Diversity and Equity Consultant. And what is Novi doing to attract and recruit more diversity, specifically Black teachers and administrators? And I know the board doesn't typically respond to these, but I would point out that the district has worked with Dr. Marks for many years here in the district already. So, and those were the 3 comments this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. As always, we don't respond and have a two-way conversation to these comments. So we do appreciate the public putting forward their suggestions and comments and concerns to the Board of Education. We certainly will be working with our administration to move forward in this regard over, the next several months going back into the school. And I will just leave it at that, as we're not to have a dialogue at this time in that regard. So we appreciate you, Mrs. Trumpy, Mrs. Kakish, and our second, Miss Anthony. Thank you very much. Okay, next we're going to move to committee reports. First, we have Legislative Committee. Mrs. Murphy is the chairperson.
Yeah, I obviously talked a little bit tonight about the one resolution. The other thing that we discussed, and we also discussed at the Finance Committee, so I won't steal your thunder, Kathy, was the proposed Oakland County millage, an enhancement millage that Oakland County is putting forward. But Steve is getting some additional information about that he's going to bring back most likely to the Finance Committee, because they will have to meet again. So that was the gist of what the discussion that we had. If you have questions about the enhancement millage, I think that information is available in the minutes from either one of those meetings. That'll probably be posted fairly soon by Mrs. Huff. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. Next, we have Finance Committee Chairperson, Mrs. Hood.
Yeah, so we reviewed the budgets that we reviewed tonight. We reviewed those with Dr. Matthews and Ms. Wheeler. And tonight you saw what we saw, and we tweaked a couple things just for clarity, but the numbers are what they are. So we did that. And we did talk a little bit, just to modify the way Mrs. Murphy described the Oakland County enhancement millage. They're not quite pushing it yet. I think Bobby said they were proposing, I don't remember, but it's just kind of floating out there. There are some districts that really, really want it. And what it is, for anybody listening, and I did not include the details in the meeting minutes, but I can adjust those. So it would be an additional, I think maybe 1.4 mils for Oakland County school districts. And Oakland County, surprisingly, is the one district in our area that does not have, I'll call it a supplemental millage. But what would be nice about this millage is that it goes into the general fund. So schools would anticipate an extra $420, $428 per student that the district could use as they wished. So it's kind of a positive thing, but there's not a lot of concrete support behind it yet. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hood. We look forward to hearing more information about that. Next, we have the Curriculum Committee, Mrs. Roney.
Hi, yeah, we met briefly last night. Sheila Ebel joined us, and basically we're going to be bringing some health curriculum to you all. I know you all look forward to that. So it's something we need to do. It's over a decade old, and we just got to do it. There's stuff in there. There's stuff that we do not have that greatly needs to be. And I know I'm going to screw this up, but it's the LGBTQ. We have nothing right now in our health curriculum. So that is of, utmost importance. And RJ, if you want to speak to some of it, you're more than welcome to. I think we had a great meeting and I look forward to more.
I just want to thank the committee structure that we have. It's a nice way to kind of beta some things and conversations, but having been a part of these conversations 10 years ago, in this area, I would say our world has definitely changed for the better. So I really do appreciate Marianne and Willie. Tom's also on the committee, but it really has been a joy to get to have conversations with real depth with you all. And I feel grateful, Marianne, as well. You've created a safe space to have, really difficult conversations in that space. So thank you.
Thank you both for all your hard work on this, and we look forward to hearing more moving forward. Next, we have the superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. This evening, I would like to make our community aware. I think they are aware, but I'd just like to reinforce that we do have a return to school planning team. We started with 3 chairs, Principal Laura Carino from Parkview, Jeff Dinkelman, the Director of Student Growth and Accountability, and Darby Hoppenstadt, the Director of Student Emotional Health. I forget her official title, but MTSS Director. And they led 3 committees that were looking at some work. And now those committees have turned over their work to Dr. Weber, and he is moving forward with teachers and administrators creating the plan for our return to school in the fall. The plan is trying to take into account all things needed, both health, curriculum, social emotional aspects. And so we believe that we will have a well-developed plan. We are committed to getting our community some information by July 1st on what our return to school plan will look like this fall. We're also beginning the process of reopening our schools. Schools cannot technically reopen until after the last day of school. And so our last day of school is June 12th. And so our schools cannot be open to the community or to athletic teams, robotics teams, et cetera, until after June 12th. Next week, we have our first committee meeting with athletic. Mr. Gordon is going to convene a committee with coaches and administrators and teachers to look at bringing back our student athletes this summer. And then we will be following MHSAA guidance with that as well. And then we will be continuing to look to reopen our buildings with our staff as well. The latest executive order identified that we should, as much as possible, allow people to continue to work from home unless there is work that they need to do in their offices. We believe that there is some work that some of our staff need to do with enrollment and making sure that we have a presence in the community during the summer. And so we will be bringing some staff back during the summer. But those plans are being formulated as we speak. This week, we also we're responding to incidents in the world. And, the Novi Community School District has for many years focused on issues related to social justice and equity. The events this past week have reinforced that work needs to continue. We can say that there is no place for racism and bigotry in our district, but our actions must show that we believe that. If students and staff believe that they are not seen or heard, we need to work with and for them so that they can feel that they have a place in our district. If we perpetuate roles and mindsets that reinforce stereotypes and devalue others, we need to change. We would encourage all to not only speak out, but act with conviction. The Novi Community School District prides itself on its diversity, accepting others, honoring all. and our commitment that we make administratively, and I'm sure the Board of Education does as well, is that we will continue that work for the good of our community and the good of our students. So that's my report this evening, Dr. Ruskin.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. We appreciate you. Next, we have our administrative reports. I will start with Dr. Kinzer, please.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. I just would like to provide you with a brief update on our search for a new Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations. The posting closed just over a week ago, and the first round of interviewing is going on this week. That round is conducted by Human Expenditures. From that, we will identify finalists that will interview with a panel of district staff. Those interviews will take place roughly 2 weeks from now, and we anticipate bringing a candidate to you for approval in July.
Thank you. Dr. Weber.
Hey, good evening. Do I have the ability to share my screen? Do we know?
I believe you do, Dr. Weber.
Okay, so we'll do that in a second. I just want to hold something in abeyance there, and I'll bring that back.
Making us all nervous, Dr. Weber.
Oh no, it's good stuff. So the piece here, this transition to our return to school, I'd like to thank so many people who've already taken part in these really thoughtful conversations and really trying to look into a crystal ball on what the future may bring. You know, I prefer living in a world of hope and a belief that it's okay if we prepare a lot and certain things don't come to fruition, so to speak, but we have to work toward that. Meaning, yes, we will be building an online option, but what's most critical is really us being with our kids. And as such, the school board has taken part in AC meetings through this entire closure, which I really appreciate. Today, we met with 25 parents for about 2 hours to get feedback from them about our return, what that could be. Met with students today as well, and our students will actually be leading a student feedback group on the things that went well and the things that we can do better, and importantly, how we return. We've given student surveys, parent surveys, and staff surveys as well. Currently, 43 teachers are working on our return, and my guess is we'll be up about around 150 doing so. Our principals, district administrators, school nurse have all and will all be part of building this. We do things a little bit differently here in Novi, and I would say we kind of go the hard route on this stuff. Because we include so many people, the levels of confusion and opinions and arguments and all of these things that occur often can lead to frustration and take a little bit more time. But I would posit that that is really where the beauty is. The struggle is what leads us to things that are really, really good. And I would put our curriculum and our efforts up against anybody because we went through that struggle with our own staff. So this summer is going to be a very busy summer for our staff in that work. In light of the past week and what is happening in our country, I think it's important for some community members as well who may not know what we've went towards in Novi. And I want to preface this though with saying, I'll never forget this moment, and this would have been 2011. And we had brought Dr. Marks in, and Carol Diglio was a principal in Novi High School, and Dr. Marks engaged in 8, I believe, different sessions through the year on all sorts of topics around social justice and equity. And a teacher left one of those rooms, and I heard them saying something like, do they really think this is going to change, everything? I was so mad. I was so angry. And I talked to Dr. Marks, and he looked at me and he said, RJ, if you think you're going to change the world and you're going to do it in a day, you're going to live your life angry and frustrated. This is a journey that takes us and will take us in the work of a lifetime. And I really do believe that. And just as Marianne talked about LGBTQ issues that we will be going toward as a community and a board, 10 years ago, us just trying to bring one lesson to the board caused some of the most uncomfortable board meetings of my life. I look at that as proof and evidence that there is always hope going forward for our future, and that things can and will change if we're willing to go toward them. And so what I want to share with you tonight is a very brief clip from the Michigan Association of School Superintendents. We had a number of our Novi High School students partner with students from Detroit Public Community School District and the Dearborn Public Schools to lead an hour-and-a-half fishbowl with every superintendent, pretty much every superintendent in the state of Michigan. And I believe, and it's why we get an education, right? Why you're board members who choose to take unpaid roles to advocate for students and their education and our families, that we believe that education truly knowledge is light and knowledge is power. And I also believe that we have to invest the real time in listening to the students we serve to help us find a way to get better. So what I'm going to play for you is a little clip from a student from DPSCD and how she views being a student in Detroit. But it's just a small clip, but I think it puts into perspective how we may need to view things in ways that we normally don't. And we do that by listening to our students and we listen to other viewpoints. When I start this clip, you'll see some of our Novi students on there. Dr. Matthews was at this event as well. I'm going to end with this clip. Before I do that, I want to say thank you to everybody who's working as hard as they possibly can to take us forward next year. There are too many people to thank, but I only wish the world could see how hard our staff and teachers are working and how committed our Board of Education is to providing a truly meaningful experience for our children. You know, many districts went out early and said they had the answer, predicted what was going to happen in September. We stayed steady. We focused on our instruction. We built that relationship with our kids in our community, and I think that'll pay benefits. So here's a little clip from MASA, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Luckily, because we have like 16 Zoom meetings a day, I think I know how to do this pretty easily right now. And we'll go from there. All right. Okay. All right. And you should be able to hear this. This will be about a minute, I think, minute and a half.
Important is, and this is something a mentor of mine, Roger Fisher, has shared with me a lot, is that, you know, data can be convincing, it can be persuasive, but storytelling is compelling. And that's really what we want to get to today, the stories of our students. So we'll be asking some questions about the data. We aren't going to go really in depth about numbers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Weber, we're not hearing this, so you might need to send it to us later.
Safety.
Can you hear it now?
There should be a different approach. There should be more, how is that called? Like workshop.
Yeah, we can hear it now.
Under presenters.
I had myself on mute. I'm going to go ahead and pull it back. It's definitely
but what
worth
are
our time.
students that
Thanks for letting me know we couldn't hear.
Can be convincing, can be persuasive, but storytelling is compelling. And that's really what we want to get to today, the stories of our students. So we'll be asking some questions about the data. We aren't going to go really in depth about numbers and things like that, but what are students' experiences around these numbers, as they are what the data is based on. So we're going to pull out these experiences as we have our conversation. So first, we have safety. And our first question we wanted to raise to our students is how does danger, how does violence, school safety, how does that impact your experience within schools? And how do you navigate that? So who would like to kick us off?
So I come from a DPS district, meaning we have our own police. So students of color, they deal with police a lot different. And there's always a struggle there. There's always a conflict. And for a while, I was undocumented. So that was also a conflict with police. And I know parents did a survey and they said they wanted more police, yet why would they want something that they're afraid of as much as their kids? And we just feel like they, instead of bringing us like a feeling of safeness, they bring a feeling of policing around, a feeling of violence, or a feeling that we can't do anything with them. So I feel like that with safety, there should be a different approach. There should be more, how is that called? Like workshops or more teaching with the adults on how to handle situations properly with kids and with students. And that could be like something that you guys would be able to help us with.
So what I'm hearing is kind of understanding how you can have something that happen more outside of the scope of police, and when conflict happens, how can we be convincing? It can be persuasive.
So with that, the important thing in my mind there is that this was in January. This is the power that our students have, and this is the power we have if we genuinely are willing to listen and act on their suggestions. It is not at all, I think everything connects in this world. So let's think about today. The Michigan Senate unanimously voted today to increase implicit bias training for police officers in their training. The message in my mind here is education matters. Our kids see it. We know that. And just as we know that one of our jobs is to obviously educate our children, we need to listen to them and also understand that adults need education as well. And that young lady encapsulated in so many ways what we've seen in the past week, but the hope of knowing that things can change, especially if we truly attend to educating and supporting people. Let's not forget that people who are police officers are not trained deeply in how to handle these situations, that many police officers are 23, 24, 25 years old as well. And that if we hope to go towards a much better country, and one that I hope we all aspire to, it's going to require a commitment of education and training, not only to our children, but to people in positions, or maybe who may be put in positions who need additional training around that. Our commitment in the Novi Community School District is to continue elevating student voice into student agency. We're going to do that as part of our come back to school process. And I'm sincerely grateful to the Board of Education and our community for being so incredibly supportive of our pillar of social justice that we've had in this district for 9 years, and so incredibly supportive in trying to be better. I don't think it can happen fast enough for any of us, but we must continue going toward it. So thank you for indulging that. Sorry for the audio pieces. Apparently when I mute or put headphones in, it must turn it off, but I'm learning. See, I'm learning. So thank you.
Dr. Ruskin, you're on mute. There.
It wasn't that important. I I just wanted to thank Dr. Weber really for always trying to bring us to a place of social justice and bringing us together to continue to learn and be lifelong learners and continue to do better and move forward. That being said, we're going to move on to board communication. I have a few things, but I'll let you guys go first. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share? Mrs. Murphy?
I just want to say thank you again to Dr. Matthews. Just the administrative meetings on Mondays they're just a good way to start the week. You know, for me, just hearing all the work that's going on and how hard everybody's, you know, putting in the time to just make such an impact. And, you know, just the starting it out with gratitude. It's just really appreciate being included in that. I think it helps to see the way everybody's thinking, and it also helps just to help everybody stay positive, quite honestly, because there's definitely strength in numbers. So thank you for that. That is it.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. Any other board communication? We have a quiet bunch tonight. I just wanted to say a few things. So the Novi CPAC, which is the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, we selected 5 above and beyond finalist awardees for the year. George Sipple has been really great in helping us get the information out in an unprecedented situation where we're not in buildings together and we can't celebrate these folks and these students and staff members. So 4 out of the 5 have been released and named over the last 4 days. So I won't tell you the 5th one, but I did want to congratulate and say thank you for going above and beyond. These people were nominated either by colleagues, by parents, by other students. Our first awardee was Tommy Finster. He is a 10th grade student at Novi High School. Our second awardee was Thomas Smith. He is an 8th grade student at Novi Middle School. We have Nancy Montalis, who is a preschool teacher. And then we also have Coach Ben Fisher, who is our ski team coach at Novi Community High School. So we are proud of the work that they do here in our district every day, as do many of our staff and students. The final awardee will be named tomorrow, so keep your eye out on Twitter. The second thing that I wanted to say, and Mr. Donnelly is still patiently sitting on our meeting, I hope just because he's interested in all the great work we're doing here in Novi Community School District. But we had a meeting last time, and we talked about some capital projects committee needs that we needed from the board. I'm not sure if Mr. Mena wants to speak on this or if he wants me to just continue on, kind of wave your hand, thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, so we showed kind of our design schematics to the group for Novi Meadows. So what we really need from the board is to continue that talk. They need our thumbs up to move forward. Mr. Donnelly shared some information with the Capital Projects Committee this week. So I am going to push that out to the entire board tomorrow so that you can kind of give your final comments on whether you are comfortable with moving forward. Because once the Capital Projects team and Mr. Donnelly's team and TMP kind of forge ahead, I think it's really, really difficult, and it will actually cost the district money to turn ourselves around and go backwards. So we really need the board's feedback at this time. The second portion of the meeting that we did not get to complete was the secure entries. Is that correct, Mr. Donnelly?
That's correct.
Okay, and so we will certainly provide that information as well for you to look over and provide some feedback so that the capital projects team can move forward. So that being said, just kind of keep an eye out for that. Please send your comments through Dr. Matthews and Ms. Holly so that the committee can continue to do its work and PMC and TMP can forge forward without having to take 5 steps backwards. So we really need your feedback and input to continue on that. And I think that is really all my comments. We have some celebrations coming up in the district that we are all looking forward to. They're going to look a little different this year. We have our adult ed graduation, and we have our NATC graduation, and many other little things. So just keep an eye out on Twitter account to see what's happening, because although we're not meeting in buildings, there is still a lot of really amazing work and celebrations that are happening here in our school district. So that being said, if any other board members have any comments, Mrs. Murphy?
I'm sorry, just one more thing. I know that tomorrow there's a little rally, Black Lives Matter rally at First Park. So I just thought I'd throw that out there, that there is a small group of, I don't know who is organizing it, but I heard that they're going to do from 10 to 1, have a peaceful kind of, just we're supportive at First Park. And then there's one in Plymouth. And there was a great article in the Wall Street Journal about these small communities that are, having peaceful kind of come-togethers. And there was a really interesting quote in that from a young man who went away to school to play football in Montana, and he was the only African-American person, and how many people came out and what it meant to him that people actually came out to support him at a place where he just didn't think there'd be more than 2 people. And there were hundreds, and it was a very small town. So anyways, just the impact that can have on people, and the support, like I said, strength in numbers. And so I just thought I'd let the board know that that is an opportunity to kind of support the social justice that we all, I think, know that we need so badly. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's actually on Saturday, not tomorrow. I think that you want the week to be over already, Mrs. Murphy. So it's on Saturday at 10 a.m. And I plan on taking my kids. We've already discussed it, and discussed how it will be great to be here in Novi in our own community and to see what peaceful action looks like and how we can support everyone in the community. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Sorry, I'm losing track of my days.
We just don't want everyone to show up at First Park tomorrow at 10 a.m. when it's actually Saturday.
Yes, that would not be good. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Roney?
Danielle, it sounds like you think there are a lot of people actually listening to this.
You don't think there are?
I'm sorry, I just couldn't help myself.
First in my bubble.
I'm so sorry. I'll buy you some bubbles.
Any other comments? Okay. Well, thank you to everyone for attending the board meeting. We know that someday, hopefully within the summer, we will be able to see each other in person again. I know I was eagerly hoping that could happen, but to just keep things following, within the realm of the executive orders and, causing not confusion for the public, we are continuing virtual to at least the end of June. So that being said, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Wow, we have lots of supporters now. Mr. Mena makes a motion and Mr. Cook second. If we can have a roll call vote.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?